Hi, people. Moin away from back here again, as always, and as usual. I am going to briefly do another astrological video or an astrology video, specifically on how to measure businesses. Now, regarding my astrological content, I have already covered, for example, countries and how to get an overview of them in terms of their properties, both geographically speaking as well as the societies that make up these countries, so the people and whatnot, and how the societal outline and or structure looks. But another thing that people don't know is that you can apply the same modus operandi other than business, other than people, so individuals and countries. You can also apply them to establishments, so to businesses. And I'm going to use my own business as an example. This is going to be very brief because a lot of people they don't know how to measure any of this stuff, obviously. So I'm just going to give an outline. Now, the first house essentially simply stands for the business overall, as in the nature of the business, what the main theme of the business is. The second house stands for the income of the business and all things relating to it. The third house simply stands for the day to day operations of said business. The fourth house stands for the business at its core in terms of occupation. The fifth house stands for the potency, so the exceptional factor or factors and or elements that both make up and or determine a business, how well a business functions in terms of how potent it is overall. The sixth house stands for functionability overall and detail consciousness and whatnot. The seventh house stands for the clientele of said business. The 11th house can stand for it as well, but the seventh house stands more for intricate business partners as opposed to just the masses, which is what the 11th house stands for. The eighth house stands for the finances of that business, so bookkeeping and whatnot, and it just goes on. Um, the ninth house stands for any kind of political or foreign affiliations that business has, and whether the business has an intellectual or educational affinity to it. The 10th house stands for the authoritative sway or authoritative element that the business has, or elements that the business has to itself. And the 12th house, last but not least, stands for any kind of shady or outright illegal activity or anything of such a nature, as well as what's happening behind the scenes for that business, as well as anything involving mental illness and so on and so forth at a corporate level. So again, I'm using my business, so Moino Wavenberg as an example. So my business, what people know me for, etc. Yeah, the first house is ruled by Virgo, which means that my business is simply purely about work, 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 and being detail conscious and a perfectionist and a craftsman and so on and so forth. It's all about attention to detail and perfection other than work. The second house, ruled by Libra, stands for my source of income. Overall income comes from interacting with people in detail that form my clients and whatnot. Obviously, they pay me, and as a result, I just do that. I get paid for the services and products and wares that I offer. That's also why Venus is at its strongest in Taurus in the eighth house. It's not in the second house because it simply means that I get my money from other people. As in, people petition me for help, I help them, they pay me, bada bing, bada boom. Um, the third house, nothing mentioned worthy to it. It's ruled by Scorpio, which stands for the fact that on a day-to-day basis, it's all about energy management, output, and whatnot, and the results that accompany it. Um, the fourth house, you've got the moon and the earth in Sagittarius there, and so on. Simply stands for the fact that it stands for the fact that on a daily basis, essentially, it is about educating the masses, educating people in terms of the who, the where, the what, the why, and the how to in regards to Esotericism as well as overall knowledge on the world, but specifically focused on esotericism, obviously. Speaking of that, the fifth and the sixth house are ruled by Aquarius. You've got Pluto there, which stands for the monstrous potency of my business, as well as the quality of my wares and whatnot. The retrogrades in this case do not apply, but pay close attention because in this case it doesn't apply because although it's highly unlikely, my business and its nature, there can be small deviations or changes, regardless of how minor, here and there, which makes it so that the retrograde is simply non-applicable. But in a business or an establishment or a corporation that is more fixed in nature, the retrograde is bound to apply. You know, a business that essentially is set in stone in its ways in terms of how it operates. And, let's just say for whatever reason, the message is clear to anyone that looks at that business as in, yeah, things are never going to change. Things are going to stay the way they are, at least for a really, 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 really long time. Then, yeah, the retrograde will apply in such a case then. But in this specific example, pertaining or regarding to my business, it does not apply. And again, all the Aquarius simply stands for catering to the masses as well as focusing on occultism and esotericism, etc. That is to be consumed by the masses. And the sixth house is ruled because it stands for the same thing essentially that Virgo, that the ascendant is in, stands for detailed consciousness, perfectionism, craftsmanship, yada, yada, yada. Now, the seventh house, you've got the pot of fortune there, Saturn there, Neptune there, which simply stands for my clientele. The absolute majority of my clientele are people that are heavily mentally afflicted. They have suffered tremendous levels of mental abuse and whatnot, and also to a lesser extent physical, and it leaves them tremendously scarred mentally and bluntly put fucked up and so on and so forth. That's why Saturn is also in Aries here, not doing well by default. Again, my clientele, they are generally speaking, for the absolute most part, people that are suffering tremendously or have suffered in some way, shape, and or form. That's what Saturn stands for, and Neptune stands for the effect it had on them. It leaves them mentally decrepit more often than not. In exceptional and other cases, it's in other and or exceptional cases, it is simply people that are looking for mental strength and power, which they believe will bring them victory in life. That's why it's the pot of fortune, and it's in Pisces. Pot of fortune stands for success. Pisces stands for mental strength and fortitude. And Saturn being in Aries in this case would mean that they want to overcome any hardships and or obstacles in their way. And Neptune stands for monstrous spiritual power that they believe makes them only hypothetically, obviously, invincible. Um, that's why, again, the eighth house is also ruled by Aries because usually the intentions are also accompanied by a strong desire for financial prosperity. That's why Neptune is conjunct the eighth house, but it's off by 56 minutes to be precise, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, but that's fine. It simply stands for the fact that that is more of a secondary focus. It's not the main focus. Ceres, however, is conjunct. It means the same thing. It stands for more of a desire to want financial prosperity on a day-to-day basis, but compared to the aforementioned troubles and issues and desires, main desires, it is still just that of a secondary nature. And let me see. Yeah, in the ninth house, you've got Uranus, for example, in Taurus, which simply stands for the fact that I digitally communicate with the world essentially, and business is conducted through those means. And of course, again, the ninth house stands for the same thing that the moon in Sagittarius here stands for knowledge, education, and the public. I'm sorry, educating the public, and so on and so forth. All of this, you're watching this online, so it speaks for itself. Um, Now, the 10th house, which arguably has the most activity, stands for the authoritative me. So the authoritative nature of my business. It's ruled by Gemini, midheaven is in Gemini, as well as the Sun and Vulcan standing for the fact that, again, my job involves talking a lot. Explanation and everything requires verbalization. So I talk a lot because I have to. Um, and I need to, plain and simple. And for the rest, you've got Jupiter and so on, and the asteroids and Mercury in Cancer, which stands for the fact that my business is authoritative more in the sense of a working from home modus operandi. Generally speaking, all of the videos I record and everything I do and whatnot is simply home, and I do so from home. And by home, it doesn't literally stand for my physical location. It essentially stands for the saying home is where the heart is. So I essentially work, I just plain and simply put work from me, from my perspective out, regardless of where I am in the world. But by default, it is in a physical environment that I call home or that I have turned into my home at the very least temporarily. But generally speaking, yeah, obviously it stands for, again, working from home, my physical location. 11th house ruled by Leo, and Mars is in Leo. Again, the masses seek strength and success and everything by utilizing the occult. And so the people that watch my videos on mass, or that read my people that just plain and simply put consume my content on mass, they do so because they seek power. That's what it's all about. They seek the good stuff. They seek a way or ways and or knowledge that will make it so that they can improve their lives or their lots in life. They can improve their positions and standings in life. And Mars and Leo simply stands for the fact that they want to actively know how to do so in an enforcement like manner. And Mars is conjunct the 12th house, also ruled by Leo, with the co-ascendant in it in Virgo, standing for the fact that, again, the main issues are pertaining, just like I said, in the seventh house, mental health and or a focus on attaining mental strength, and doing away with one's mental troubles in a maximum potent manner. And the co-ascendant lastly also says that these mental illnesses at a lesser level can also have physical ramifications, which is the case by default. But in the whole scheme of things, it is minor. Just looking at things overall, it's quite minor, or just plain minor. So yeah, there you go. That's what the outline of any business or establishment or corporation looks like, given my own business as an example. So in this chart, if you can read it the way I just showed you, then you'll see what my business is all about, how my business operates, and so on and so forth. Goodbye for now.